Hello everyone, my name is Richard and welcome to this online presentation that was done for Ayrshire College's CPD week, and it's called ACTV Presents Tips for Online Demonstrations and Presentations. So what we're going to do essentially is we're going to look at some of the techniques that myself and John teach in the media department to students with regards to filmmaking, and we're going to see which of those skills are applicable to online learning with regards to setting up a camera, making yourself up and presenting, because potentially next semester, next academic year, we're going to be presenting a lot more online, and there's a couple of little things we can show you that are important and relevant to getting the best possible quality content for your presentations. So with that in mind, let's make a start. So like I say, today we're going to be covering the following. We're going to have an equipment overview where we're going to look at some of our recommended pieces of equipment that is worth purchasing, I believe personally, to make your lectures the best they possibly can be. So we'll look at some of them. Not every single one of them is essentially needed or essential. It's just something that will raise the quality of the videos you produce. And we're then going to talk about presentation setups in terms of how you go about picking a space and setting up your video lectures. So we're going to look at location, shot type, sound, editing, zoom settings, and we're also going to talk very, very briefly about secondary camera for demonstrations, which I think is really, really cool. But unfortunately, my secondary camera hasn't arrived yet, so I can't take you through it yet. Then we're then going to have a very brief look at general tips, and because this is a recorded one, we won't do part 4, which is questions and answers. But I guess this will be on Twitter and on YouTube, so if you have any questions, you can always stick them there, and we'll do our best to answer them. Modern world. Okay, let's start by talking about equipment. So no matter how you slice it, expenditure on equipment will impact upon the flexibility and the quality of the content you create. You could be the best in the world at online presentation, but if your video looks sloppy, if your sound's muddy, it's not necessarily going to engage the listener or the viewer. So what we want to do is highlight a couple of little bits of equipment that will just raise the quality and the standards of the videos that you produce, and hopefully lead to more engagement online. That said, there's no need to break the bank. So lighting, for example, can range into thousands and thousands of pounds. We're not going to do that, and we're not going to suggest you need every single light for every single scenario. We've got one light we've highlighted, for example, and we think this is the one that will be a general purpose light, and it's not that expensive, that would hopefully be beneficial. So before we begin talking about how to set up, let's look at some of the equipment that you can purchase to make your life that little bit easier. And I guess that's something else that's worth saying, that it's time versus money. So with a couple of little bits of equipment, you can make your life a lot easier and spend a lot less time faffing around. And that's certainly the way I look at it when I'm buying something silly like this microphone I'm using right now. Okay, so let's start with webcams. Now, most laptops that you purchase today will have a webcam on them. However, it's worth considering purchasing a freestanding webcam. The reason being that it's much more flexible. It's not tied to your laptop, so you can move it around. You can potentially show your laptop if you're showing students how to do something for demonstration purposes. On top of that, it's going to be a better quality. Conceivably, or most likely, it's going to be better quality, and 2 cameras are better than 1. So like I say, I'm going to mention later on, we're going to talk about multi-camera setups. To have 2 cameras and be able to flick between the 2 instantaneously is so much more fluid and enjoyable and hassle-free than moving and shifting your laptop around every time you need to show somebody something. The camera that we recommend is the Logitech C920. It's got HD resolution, a high frame rate, glass lens, and it performs well in low light. The other little key fact to look for when you're purchasing a webcam is that it can be mounted on a tripod. That's going to give you much more flexibility and stability when you're actually setting up and trying to show students things. So we really recommend that one. It's quite nice. Next up is lighting. So lighting yourself correctly is pivotal to making your videos look professional. If it's really dark and drab, you're not going to be as engaging as you could be elsewise. So making sure everything's nice and bright and clean aesthetically is going to really, really boost your video quality. Natural light, particularly in Scotland, isn't always reliable. So right now we're doing a lot of web chats and stuff like that, and everyone's bathed in this nice natural light. But as we get into the winters, if you imagine doing a video lecture in the morning, it's going to look potentially quite drab. So having some kind of supplemental light source is really worth considering. For that reason, we're highly recommending that you invest in some form of lighting equipment. On this image, you can see here right here is a ring light, and these are the lights that are favored by beauty bloggers and the like, and it's because it gives you a nice soft light that sort of covers up the shadows and is actually quite flattering when you use it, so it's well worth having a look at. The benefits are more control when you purchase lighting. So, for example, that ring light in the image is the same one as the one I've got, and it's got a dimmer switch on it, so you can either raise it or lower it depending on the look you want. It's also a time saver. I could probably recreate to an extent the same lighting using lamps and things that I've got lying around in the house, but gathering those lamps and then putting them back again at the start of every single lecture or lesson that I do online is not going to be very practical, and I'm going to waste so much time. So this is one purchase. It's super light, relatively inexpensive, and it gives you a lot more control and flexibility. If you're looking for a ring light, you really want to look at a natural light, so that's 6,000 kelvins up, or daylight bulbs, I guess is what most people will be familiar with calling them, that it has an adjustable dimmer, that it has some kind of flexible neck that can be moved around to make sure you can put it into whatever position you want, and also a mains connection, so you don't want one that runs just on batteries, purely because you're going to be doing this quite a lot potentially, and you don't want to be going through batteries. An external USB microphone is also worth considering. People are much more forgiving of bad video than they are of bad audio. That sounds really, really strange, but it's true. You can watch a video, and I've watched quite a few of them in class, where everything is a little bit shaky, or it looks a bit like the Blair Witch and the camera's constantly moving around. As long as the audio is good, as long as you can hear what people are saying, it's going to hold your attention. It's still going to pull you in. But if you're delivering a lecture online and the students can't hear you, they're very, 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 very quickly going to start switching off. So a must is an external microphone. The benefits include higher quality sound and freedom to move around. So right now, for example, my laptop's actually sitting a little bit away from me. I'm not able to reach the keyboard fully. But because I've got that external microphone, you can still hear me, so it gives me more flexibility in where I place my camera to get a nicer shot aesthetically and feel more natural, but also I'm not compromising my sound quality in order to do that. So a microphone like the Blue Yeti, which you can see on the screen here, is worth considering. What to look for: a stability, a multiple polar patterns. So if we get into complex, that basically means that the microphone can be opened up in different ways. So you could have a roundtable discussion if you've got a guest, for example, or it can just be a direct input for one person. And also a headphone jack is a really good thing to have on your microphone as well, because it allows you to monitor the sound that you're recording, like I am now with these headphones. So yeah, hey, let's move on. Okay, other little bits and pieces. A pair of wired headphones. Now, I know a lot of people use Beats and such like with no wires or wireless headphones these days, but to be honest, it's just adding something else into the mix that can go wrong if you're working from Bluetooth. The other benefit is that you won't get as much feedback if you're using headphones when you're recording. I was dead set against it at first because I just didn't like the way it looked, but the truth is the impact is substantial when you start using headphones when you record, so a wired pair of headphones are really worthwhile. An external keyboard, well, kind of like with the microphone situation, if you want to be able to position your camera a little bit further away from you, you might want to also be able to type on keys, so buy an external keyboard, which are only, I don't know, like 20 quid, something like that, sorry, excuse me, for a cheap one. It's going to give you a lot more flexibility. And the final thing is a chair. Now, the reason we're highlighting that is because we've all got chairs kicking around the house, I would imagine, but they're not all suitable for what we're talking about. You want one with a nice straight back. This chair that I'm in right now is probably a little bit too tall, if anything, but you want something with a nice straight back that's going to keep you upright and engaged with students. Body language is going to be a huge thing when you're presenting online, and if you're slouched back, sort of like this or like this, even if you are interested, even if you are engaged, it's not going to look like you are, so it's really, really important. The other thing you want to look for is a chair with no wheels, so you're not moving around constantly in the frame, which is quite natural to swing around in a chair when you've got the opportunity. So yeah, a really stationary, simple chair is something worth investing in if you don't already have one in the house. Okay, so when it comes to finding the right, or to get the perfect shot, it really begins with the location. So choosing the right area in your house to broadcast from is the first step to success when it comes to doing video presentations online from home. If you look at these rather untidy pictures of my living room, you're looking for certain things, and you're going to take certain considerations into mind. I literally just wandered around the house and thought where would be good to do my video lectures from when I started out. And these are the sort of things I was looking for. Environmental factors, your ability to control the environmental factors in the location you choose. So if, for example, lots of people have been, and I include myself in this, been broadcasting occasionally from their back garden, which is really, really nice. You're bathed in natural light. It's a lovely aesthetic. However, there are potential problems. If someone starts using their lawnmower, for example, or it starts raining, you're going to have to shift. So you really want to, if you're going to be doing this day in, day out, conceivably, you don't want to have to consider that or constantly keep moving. You want somewhere you can set up and be comfortable, control the environment as much as possible. There will always be things that you can't control, for example, the doorbell going or your dog barking. And just sitting right next to me now, wondering if he's about to go off. But c'est la vie. But what you're trying to do is eliminate as many as possible. So your ability to lock down the space. So you want to look at the space and say, can I sort of lock this off? Is there a door, for example? Or is this a room that's used a lot in the house? That's another potential problem if people are going to be going in and out throughout. You want to know you can lock things down as much as possible, even though it's not always conceivable to completely lock it down. Potential distractions for the viewer. So my office, for example, would seem like a logical place for me to broadcast from. However, it's full of toys and comics and video games and weird statues and stuff like that, which I think, if I was broadcasting for students, could potentially, conceivably be a distraction. And I'm going to end up people asking me, why have you got a giant ET? And that kind of thing in your house. So you want to try and get away from that as much as possible. This is not the most exciting background I've ever put together on this video. However, it's nice and plain and it keeps the focus on the person who's talking. Hopefully. I hope nobody's got that grey background, so much more interesting than this guy. But okay, right, moving on. Required alterations. This is a big one. So I shoot quite a lot in my house in terms of YouTube videos and things like that, and I have to move sofas around and tables and stuff when I do it. If this is going to be a repeat operation and you're going to have to do it multiple times, you can't be doing that. So you're really looking for somewhere that's easy to set up. You don't want to be shifting a sofa, for example. So if we look at these two pictures here, if we look at the top one, the grey wall behind the sofa is a really good location for me to shoot because it's a simple plain background, and I've also got the window next to me for natural lighting purposes. That could be super beneficial. However, if I'm going to have to move that sofa every single time I do a video lecture and then put it back straight after, it's not really a good idea, and I'm certainly not going to broadcast from the sofa. So that takes that right out of the running. In the second image, you'll see the little space in the background where we are right now, which is the sort of dining table area. All I've had to do here to make this a serviceable area is push the table a little bit forward and bring in a light, and I've kind of been ready to go. I've got a little window to one side that's going to bring in some natural light, and I'm supplementing that from my right side here with another light just to give me a little bit of a boost. So yeah, that's the first thing to do, is look at your location and consider the possibilities and the potential problems of each location. Okay, so things to remember. Again, this is maybe covering what we've just talked about a little bit, but the first one is don't shoot towards the window. So the first image on this screen here is me in front of a window, and a lot of people make this mistake. They think, oh, it'll be really, really nice if I'm in the house, but you can see out the window, you can see the nice natural environment. The problem is you're working with cameras that are making decisions for you. They're automatic. So what the camera does is it looks for the area that's exposed correctly, and it lights for that. It makes technical changes in order to capture that. So what you end up with is this image here of me looking a bit like a sort of wild-haired Andy McNabb. And you want to avoid that if possible. This other image is just the reverse of it. I just flipped the camera around, and now the window is working for me. It's actually lighting the subject, and I'm nice and pronounced in the image, and the background is a little bit darker, which again keeps the focus on me. So a really, really simple change there, a really simple rule: do not shoot towards windows. You've probably seen it in your own photography or your own exploits on Zoom, that if you stand near a window, it can either blow out and become really white and you're in focus, or else the reverse happens where the window is really, really nice and you're really dark. So just try and keep that in mind. think long term and ease of use. That was kind of what I was talking about with the sofa. So the image on the right here is myself when I did a media promo and shot in the house, and in that case I moved that sofa in order to make the space and brought in some props and things like that. Now, it's a really nice image, if I do say so myself, but it's not practical or convenient. It takes up over half the living room in order to get that shot, and I had to move the sofa. It's not something I could do day to day. It's for one-offs. So again, keep it simple. Okay, here's another one. Don't press yourself against the wall. There are much more extreme examples in this. Because it was actually such a really nicely lit day and I was getting light from all areas, it was a little bit difficult to show this off. But if you look to the first image on the screen on the left, you might see a little shadow behind my head. It's actually quite pronounced when you start to notice it. And that's because I'm too close to the wall. You want to come off the wall a little bit, or else you end up looking, particularly if it's a dark wall, it can look quite depressing and it's very claustrophobic. You want to give yourself a little bit of space. So for example, right now, if I reach behind me, I can't actually reach the wall behind me. So that's probably a good marker to say if you're a little bit further away. If you're more harshly lit, you're going to get stronger shadows, and you really want to avoid those shadows as much as possible. It's not possible to get rid of every shadow without some detailed lighting equipment or some useful lighting equipment, but you can get rid of the main ones, which is going to be beneficial when you're trying to keep the focus on yourself and not look too dramatic. Okay, the other thing to consider is how much are you willing to share. So I've got that original image of me in front of the window up again. This is kind of a personal question for everyone to a degree, but you want to think about what's going to be in the frame. So for example, in this image here, you can see my bookshelf. You can also see somebody walking around in the background outside the glass. That's my fiance. If you set up like this, you're going to get a nice location background, which can look really nice. If I'd lit the background, this would actually be quite a nice shot. However, that aesthetic, which does look really nice undeniably, is going to give people more things to focus on and potentially could lead to problems later on. So for example, I don't know, say you're a fan of a particular football team and you've got a poster up in the background and somebody sees it and they decide that's offensive, or you've got a book that is for some reason considered offensive, and that's something somebody could latch onto. Or it can be something funny, like I mentioned earlier on. I've got this, say, a giant life-sized ET in the house. If somebody sees that, that's obviously going to draw their focus because it's weird. So you want to avoid that as much as possible. So a shot like this, I think, while can look aesthetically pleasing if I lit it a little bit better, is not the right thing for online lectures. This is not my style, this sort of grey background and just very simple setup, but I think it's effective for what we're being asked to do. Okay, so once you've got your location and you think, right, that's where I'm going to shoot, you want to start thinking about your background, your framing, and the shot angle you're going to use. So for framing, you want to pick something between a medium shot and a medium close-up. So I would say a belly button to the top of the head is kind of what you're looking for, a medium shot, and maybe even a little bit tighter, something like this. Too close and you risk appearing intense, which can be tiring after a long period of time, and you'll take away focus from what you're saying by being too intense. Or too far away, and people, again, you'll get lost in your background and people will lose their attention span again. One of the easiest ways to make your appearance instantly better on camera is to raise your camera to above eye level, ever so slightly, either eye level or slightly above. And then if you do go slightly above, a tiny little tilt on it, nothing too extreme, just a tiny little bit, and it's got a bit of a slimming effect, which is beneficial to people like myself. A top tip here is that you can save some money just by placing some books, a stack of books under your laptop. It's cheap, but it's really, really effective, and you're going to get your camera a much nicer level. So let's have a little look at some examples. So here we have an example of angles. So the top angle is probably the sort of standard one. The first image on the left is probably the sort of standard image you see, which is somebody looking down on a laptop. It brings in the leading lines in the back on the roof, which are not necessarily that appealing. You've got a bit of a television in the shot as well, and it also looks a little bit menacing. It looks like I'm sort of standing over someone that I've maybe knocked over or something like that. The second one is bringing in far too much of the background, and again, it just doesn't look right. It looks a little bit warped in some way. The third one is not an ideal image. in terms of I look quite intense in it. However, I'm looking directly into the camera, and that is exactly what you want it to be doing. Nothing really much more extreme than that, just straight into the camera or slightly raised and tip the screen a little bit. Okay, so framing. So this is when we're talking about shot type. The first one here, obviously that would be terrifying if that was what was delivering you a lecture, leaning right into your face like that. The second one, I'm starting to get lost in the background. Okay, you can see my Kris Jenner jumper, and that looks quite nice, I think. However, that's not what people are here to see, I'm assuming. And they're not there to see the background either. So what I'm saying, what I'm talking about is going to get lost in the shuffle. The final image is, again, something that you really want to be looking towards or moving towards. Something where you can gesture a little bit with your hands. People can see what you're doing. You can gesticulate a little bit. However, the focus remains mainly on your face and what you're doing. So that's going to be much easier in terms of communication, again, when we consider things like body language and facial expression. When it comes to sound, there are 4 key pieces of advice. Use an external USB microphone, which we talked about a little bit earlier. This will improve the quality of the sound on your videos. It will give you more freedom from your laptop. In order for you to get that shot that we're recommending and also maintain the quality of sound, you kind of need that external microphone. Make sure the front of the microphone is facing you. That sounds really obvious, and I'm sorry if it's patronizing, but it's not always clear. Like the Blue Yeti, like the one microphone I'm working with here right now, a lot of people think the top of it is the front of the microphone when it's actually this side here facing me. And if I move that around and change it a little bit, you're going to hopefully hear the quality drop quite quickly, and the directional nature of the microphone is sort of showing up. So you really want to make sure it's facing you. And also, a lot of people set up their space and then they move, because that's not actually even what's natural. They set up what they think it should look like, and then they go to what's comfortable. You want to keep moving the microphone and make sure that you're comfortable in that space so it stays the same throughout. Place your microphone as close as you can without it becoming a distraction. So ideally, you want to be quite close to your microphone, but you don't want it sort of taking up half the shot like this so that it becomes a problem. And the final thing is to wear headphones. So as I mentioned earlier on, headphones are a great way of not only hearing what other people are saying, but also what you're saying as well. Okay, so lighting. Webcams don't perform the best in low light. This can lead to the image appearing grainy and muddy. So that top image there is a good example of that. You've probably seen something like this if somebody's phoned you at night and you've not had the lights on. It gets a little bit nasty looking. If you're shooting in a room with lots of light, you should be fine. But if you're not, you might have to consider lighting yourself with supplemental lighting. If working with a lighting source such as a ring light or a desk lamp, sit it behind your laptop. That's the easiest advice we can give you, is just set the light up behind your laptop and it should hopefully flow onto you. That's again why you want to give yourself a wee bit of distance at the back as well, so it doesn't cast your shadow onto the wall, or not dramatically anyway. So the goal is to light your face as evenly as possible. You want the main focus of your videos should be, I'd imagine, when it's a video lecture, what you're saying and your facial expression while you say it. So that's the area we're looking to light as concisely as possible. Okay, so we could set all this stuff up and it could all be wonderful, but if our Zoom settings are off, it's not going to look wonderful in the broadcast. So here are a couple of little things you can do to make sure you get the best quality out of Zoom. Making your videos look and sound good on conference calls isn't just a matter of hardware. They also have to make some small changes so you can put them within Zoom to improve your output. This includes turning HD video on and cancelling auto volume control and audio suppressors. So I'm just going to talk through this process now. Sorry, the dog's moved in again next to me. He's going to start making a racket. I've not locked down the space. Turn on a HD video is a relatively straightforward process. Next to the camera in the bottom left of your screen is an up arrow. Click it. This will access the drop-down menu and click on video settings. And what's going to happen then is you're going to see a window that looks like this. The video settings menu will now open. Under the subheading My Video, you should see a little tick box labeled Enable HD. Tick this box and exit the menu. Your videos should now be streaming in HD. So that is instantly going to raise the quality of the video output that you load up to Zoom when your videos are in HD. So it's well worth doing. It's such an easy thing to do as well. The second one is a little bit more fiddly, and this is about improving the audio. The next to the microphone in the bottom left of your screen is a up arrow. Click it. This will access a drop down menu. Click on audio settings. So this will open another menu like this one here. The audio settings menu will now open. Under the subheading microphone, you should see a tick box labeled automatically adjust audio. You make sure that this box is not ticked, so you want to untick it. Essentially what you're doing there is taking control back from the computer. You're going to say, I am going to set my audio levels. Now, the issue here is you're now responsible for checking your audio levels, so it's going to give you something more to do, but it's also going to give you more control and more clarity over the audio that you produce. So a little bit of experimentation once you've done that and you've got your space locked off and you know where you're going to be shooting, is going to improve things significantly. Click on the advanced button in the bottom right of the window, and that's going to take you to this. Tick the box which says show in meeting option to enable original sound. So you want to make sure that box is ticked. You want to switch suppress persistent background noise to disabled, and you want to switch suppress intermittent background noise to disabled. Again, a lot of the time Zoom is taking the sound and the video that you produce and compressing it. It's trying to eliminate noises from the background automatically, and that leads to issues. It can be good in some occasions, but again, I highly recommend you have full control over what's getting suppressed and what's not getting suppressed. It's another factor in whether, if you're doing like a, I'm trying to think, say you're doing a physical education class where you want to see your whole body. If you move a certain distance away from your laptop and that's ticked, nobody's going to be able to hear what you're saying. So your best bet would be to get a lavalier mic and be hooked up to you. But a second best bet would be to switch that off so that Zoom is not eliminating any sound from the broadcast. Click exit menu and you're all done there. So, another thing that I would love to show you that I'm unable to show you right now because my webcam hasn't arrived is multi-camera demonstrations, and this I think is going to be super important going forward. Sometimes you might need to demonstrate something physically. For these scenarios, the laptop's inbuilt camera might not be best suited. We certainly don't want to mess up the nice setup we've just created. So we've just spent time, you've seen what's involved in it, I've talked to you a little bit about it. If you've just done that, you don't want to immediately then be moving the camera and your laptop around to show students certain things on your desk or moving it back and forth to try and stand up. That is going to eat into so much time. The best thing you can do is have another webcam set up and plugged into your laptop with the second shot that you require. So say it's a tabletop shot like this, this top image here. And that's going to allow you to, if you're doing an illustration class, for example, illustrate on the desk and just switch with the push of a button in Zoom between your cameras and then switch back when you're talking, or potentially have both cameras running at once. That is so much more beneficial, so much more easy for you to use, so much easier for students to understand, and it's going to get rid of a lot of faff time. So well worth doing it. The other thing you could do is have like a close-up of something if you're wanting to go into detail and you're doing something. I don't know what this guy's doing in this image, I just grabbed it offline, but if he's soldering a microchip, so if you wanted to show something like that, having a second image rather than try to push your microchip towards your computer screen and do it there, that's obviously going to work better for you. So for these reasons, it's sometimes nice to have a separate camera on standby just for the purposes of demonstration. I hadn't intended to buy another webcam at first. I thought I'll just work from the laptop, and I've got plenty of other types of cameras. But to be honest, I think it's going to be essential. If not essential, it's going to make life a lot easier going forward. Okay, so here's some final general tips just to finish off. Other things you should consider when using Zoom is look into the lens. Something I've not really been doing during this, and it's not as easy as it sounds, I guess, looking into the lens. Our focus tends to be at Zoom meetings in particular on the people on the screen. But if you're delivering a presentation, if you're talking to an audience, really you want to be looking into the lens so when they look at the screen, it looks like you're looking directly at them. If you're looking at the screen, you're not looking at your audience, and that again can lead to people disengaging. So really important, even though I've ignored my own advice. It is something that takes a while to get used to because you're just naturally drawn to other people's faces on the screen. Wardrobe, what you wear will play a large part in defining you. So again, it's kind of odd because I dress quite casually at the college, and I think that's a benefit in a way of how I engage with students. But if I'm working from home, I'm probably going to be a wee bit smarter just to try and emphasize the classroom nature of it. You're trying to do other things that are going to establish a classroom mentality and structure. So that's one of the things I'm going to do. You want to stay away from stripes, because if you've got stripes on, or heavy stripes, and you're moving around, it can make people a little bit nauseous. So avoid that where possible. Makeup. I'm not suggesting that you're trying to a mean smoky eye, or that I'm done up like a French Duke. What you want to do is you don't need to do it, but it's something considering. If you've got slightly greasier skin and stuff like that, if you just put a little bit of powder on, it's going to get rid of it. Just be very careful with the powder. You don't want to go overboard. Switching your camera off. This is one that people seem to not want to do once they've started and they're in there, but there's nothing wrong with switching your camera off. If you need to adjust something, you need to change things around, I would always just switch the camera off while I'm doing it through Zoom, in order to get things right, so I'm not faffing around and leaning over and all the rest of it. It's not a crime, so just switch it off. And slightly exaggerate body language. Body language is an incredible part of how humans communicate. And if you think about it, when we've just got this little box on Zoom and we're already removed by a great distance and there's all this technology between us, it becomes harder and harder to read people's body language. So a little bit of exaggeration is going to go a long way when you're communicating with students and you're talking to them and you're trying to reassure them, etc., etc., etc. If you think about, you don't have to go full Jim Carrey. It doesn't have to be like exaggerated body language to an incredible extent. But just if someone's talking and you're making sure to nod as if you're listening, things like that, it can go a long way. So, yeah. Right, that's us. There is no Q&A because this is a recording after the fact. But if you do have questions, you could always stick them on Twitter or email me, or what else could you do? Or a comment under the YouTube video, I guess. So, thanks very much for listening. I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.